I'm Stacey Cofield, Associate Professor in Biostatistics. I am also the brand new chair of the Online Education Committee for the School of Public Health. We were formed just about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, as a charge from the EPC to sort of really look into what is going on with our online education program here in the School of Public Health. Our goal is, or has been, to hold these lunch and learns, hopefully twice a semester. We've had one before, so welcome to our second one. And of course, to be a resource for you for anything or any questions or any problems that pop up if you are specifically teaching online, or really with the learning management system we have, which is Canvas. And today, that's actually what we're going to talk a little bit about in my talk: blending, flipping, extending, applying quality matters beyond the online classroom. So the learning management system, Canvas, for us has become pretty ingrained in most of our courses. So I would say that most of us use it, but a lot of people simply use it for file sharing, or maybe for emailing or contacting the students if you're not an online, quote-unquote, online teacher. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is Quality Matters. It's, if you've ever heard of it before. How many people have heard of Quality Matters? Oh, good. But we're going to talk a little bit more about it in case you... How many people here have taken the class, the applying? Okay, a few. And then anybody else a QM reviewer? I'm a QM reviewer, so we've got a QM reviewer in the back. And I know Dale Dickinson is a master reviewer, which means he will chair reviews. I'm in the process of my first review right now with a class here at UAB. So if you are unaware, UAB is a QM subscriber, which means that we have access to all of the QM materials. You can take the classes here to get certified in applying the rubric. You can take the reviewer courses online at a discount. So I'm glad that most people are familiar with it. We will talk about how QM can be effectively applied to an in-person, traditional, lecture-based course to achieve a more dynamic and purposeful classroom. And in specifics, we'll actually look at applying course competencies for what is this QM word of alignment to your syllabus, group activities, lectures, and assessments that you do. So our objectives today, if you've gone through QM, our objectives today, I will introduce the QM standards. This one is not particularly measurable. I'm just going to tell you. I guess there's a video here so we can measure that I have in fact introduced them. But that's okay. We'll talk about the standards for QM in just a minute. We will apply the QM standards to a face-to-face class. We will categorize learning activities to a module level, course level, or competency/degree level objective. And as you know, our degree level objectives have been accepted through our certification, so you can't actually change those. So what do you do to try to meet those objectives since they're out of your control? And then we'll also look at designing a 3-level outline, incorporating what I call think, do, explain activities. It's sort of a modified of the new Bloom's taxonomy. So how will we meet these objectives? First, I'm going to introduce QM a little bit more. We will identify the key QM standards. We'll talk about what can go online when you have a face-to-face or blended course, how to apply the rubric, the higher education rubric. We will build active learning from the beginning. So we're going to talk about how to do that. And talk about a dynamic classroom, creating a dynamic classroom and using your online learning management system to free up your time in the classroom rather than it being very didactic. So let's do a little bit of the history of QM before we launch into talking about incorporating some of the best aspects of online teaching into your blended or face-to-face traditional classes. So 1999, initiated by Maryland Online Consortium. 2003, they were awarded a FIPSE grant. And this is a group of people, sort of a bunch of online education colleges or universities had sprung up with really no metrics as how to manage what's a great site. What class are you getting a good feedback from? What are the students getting out of it? After 2003, They became a separate nonprofit organization in 2014. So this is a nonprofit group. They are not for profit. And today we have more than, they have more than 900 subscribers in the higher education realm in the United States and across the world. So it's a well-utilized, and like I said, UAB is a QM subscriber. So let's talk about what it isn't first. QM is not about content. When you apply the rubric or if you go in for a review, they're not going to be talking about the content that you are delivering. It's going to be talking about the course design that you use to deliver that content. It's not about how you choose. So you can do it with a video, you can do it with readings, you can do it with activities. It's just making it clear to the student how they access that and what is the order in which they should access those things, and that everyone has access to it in a similar manner. So it's very clear. Imagine being a first-time graduate student and using a learning management system for the first time. Where do I start? Well, how about a Start Here button? That makes it pretty clear about where to start and sort of outlining how your class will flow. It's not about judgment. They make it very clear to you when you go through as a reviewer that you don't want to write down anything that you wouldn't say to somebody in a conversation. It's collegial. It's about improving. It does not remove academic freedom. I know that there has been some questions about that in terms of, well, they said I couldn't do this. One, a reviewer shouldn't ever say you can't do that. It should say, how can I improve this? How can I make this better? It should be about supportive evaluation, and it is peer-driven. These are not employees at a company that are reviewing your class. This is peers in academia that are reviewing your class. There is a subject matter expert, by the way, on every 3-person review panel. And you may say, well, I don't teach online. That's OK. I don't teach online right now either. I actually teach a blended class. So I utilize the online management system for their classroom time outside of the class. How many of you use Canvas, even minimally? So some handfuls. These standards that we're going to talk about, you can leverage Canvas to work for you to actually free up. Go back to that word cloud, time-consuming, to actually free up some of that time. So what are the QM higher ed standards? There are 8. Course overview and introduction, learning objectives, assessments and measurements, resources and materials, learner engagement, course technology, learner support, and accessibility. Each of these has subcategories that form a rubric. There are these key elements. So you can see they're 2.1 and 2.2, which are back up here in learning objectives. And then the first element from 3, 4, 5, and 6. We'll talk about those in a second. It is not a 100% benchmark, and it's not a unanimous vote. There are 3 reviewers. 2 out of 3 reviewers must agree that the standard has been 80% met. So if you look at all your module objectives, count them up. That's how I do my reviews. I count them up. And I go, OK, is this met? Is that measurable? Is it specific? Is there a rubric? And if 80% of them is yes, then I'm going to approve that, which means you may have things in there that aren't necessarily measurable or specific. So it's not 100% benchmark, but the key elements must align. And by that I mean if you are teaching a speech course, your assessments shouldn't all be written, right? So, and there are online speech courses. I've reviewed one. They videotape their speeches. And so those are the types of things they're talking about when they say alignment. So all the way through, things should support one another. How you do that. Let's talk about how to do that. As I go through here, by the way, the rubric, or the standard, which area it's in, is going to be up here in the right-hand corner. And we will send these slides out after the talk today. So QM1, which is the course introduction. Following QM1 for rubric 1 will free up a lot of time in class. You can put special sections for all of your syllabus. I have a syllabus quiz. That's their first activity the first week of class, which ensures that they have read it. And it's things like, what time of day are homeworks due by? What day of the week are all of the exams? So that they understand when these things are going to happen, and they've fed that back to me that I know that they've read it. Online introduction and discussion forum. So I have a 3-question, so they fill out a discussion panel on their first week to get to know each other. And it's not 3 questions, it's not things like, why are you here? Because then I'll get answers like, to learn about linear models. It's like, what are your objectives? What do you want to do with your life? They're sort of broader questions. And then one little neat tidbit about you, just so that they can get used to using the discussion forum on Canvas. And then clarity in the course expectations. And this one is really, really key. When do you expect things to be completed? At what level do you expect them to be completed? What are some examples of what's an A, B, C? And I don't mean specific tests. I have verbiage on my syllabus that says, turning things in on time and doing what is expected of you is a C in the class. Here's how you get a B and here's how you get an A. So that they understand what will be expected. How many times a week do they have to post something? Those types of things. If it impacts student performance, put it up on Canvas and leave it there. I can't tell you the number of times I send an email back to a student, which I only do through Canvas, by the way, to my students, because then there's a permanent record of it. And I know where I can go to find it, should I happen to accidentally delete it out of mine. By the way, if you reply in your email to a Canvas email, it goes back through Canvas and stays there. So it's never personal communication. But I tell students all the time, go back and read the announcement from this date. That information is there to get them geared towards, I don't know, answering some questions themselves. Policies, due dates, grades, those can be clear up front and posted online. And you can use your learning management system for a lot of things that you may not have known. So when you get back to the slides, you can click on this. How do I subscribe the calendar feed using Google Calendar? Your calendar in Canvas has a link. In Google, you can add other calendars to it. Just put that link in. And anything you put in on Canvas will show up on your Google Calendar. If you have your Google Calendar linked to your Outlook calendar, then it will feed into your Outlook calendar. So really, one of the fantastic things I think about leveraging the system. So getting started on QM2 on the second rubric, this is sort of the objectives of the class. It is impossible for students to understand the goals of the course if you don't understand them start to finish. So I think, I have good teaching scores. My class seems fine. Why do I need to monkey with this? Well, the thing is that once I started going through this, I realized that there were a lot of things that could have been made much more clear for the student so that I wasn't constantly answering questions about why. Why do we have to do this? So get a big picture idea of what you want out of the course and the interactions. What kind of interactions do you want to have? Do you want student to student? Do you want student to material? Do you want student to instructor? How are you going to work those into your class? You may not have the final assignment done, but you may have an idea of this is going to be a discussion board. And how is that going to achieve this goal? What major topics will be covered? What learning materials are going to be presented? What technologies and media do we need? That's QM6. Knowing what software you're going to need, what access they'll need to have to it, how are they going to get it, what do they need? Poll EV? Do they have to subscribe to some? I have Twitter in my classes where I use it to send out, see how many clinical trials you can find mentioned in this New York Times article. So students can subscribe to the Twitter feed to get those types of things. So what kind of materials will they need? So for the learning objectives, I have some handouts. So our technologists, or if you guys haven't met them, why don't you guys say your names real quick? Everybody turn around. Fantastic. So they're going to be handing out some, we're going to do some activities today. Going to make this active learning. So your learning objectives are often lost on students. They see these things in the syllabus and they flip to the very next page to find out when the final exam is going to be. Right? They just absolutely ignore the course objectives. And if the objectives on your syllabus are degree level, they're going to seem so broad that the students aren't going to understand how that particular class applies to those objectives, especially if they're entry-level courses. And we're talking about PhD degree competencies. Well, that's like 5 years from now. I don't need to know that. Well, yeah, you do. So think about your objectives as having your reservations for a trip. So your learning objectives are often lost on students. They see these things in the syllabus and they flip to the very next page to find out when the final exam is going to be. Right? They just absolutely ignore the course objectives. And if the objectives on your syllabus are degree level, they're going to seem so broad that the students aren't going to understand how that particular class applies to those objectives, especially if they're entry-level courses. And we're talking about PhD degree competencies. Well, that's like 5 years from now. I don't need to know that. Well, yeah, you do. So think about your objectives as having your reservations for a trip. So you've made all the reservations. I know what hotel I'm going to stay at. I know what time my flight is. I have an itinerary for what I'm going to do. And then by the end of your class, you're going to show a slideshow of actually having done those things. I got to tell you, I end my classes now with a presentation of the course objectives, and I tell the students how they met them. So I start the class by showing them at the beginning of every module, I have what are called essential questions, because if I throw the word up there, objective, they're going to go, right? So I say, what are the essential questions you need to answer at the end of class today? What are the things that you need to know? How those essential questions lead into the course objective and into the degree objective. We round that out at the end of the semester. So they may be mandated. Ours are. Our degree level ones certainly are. They may not be student-centered, easily measurable, or active learning objectives. That's okay for the peer review. You can tell them. These are mandated. I can't change them. But then your course objectives and your module level objectives should be measurable and specific so that the student understands what they're gaining out of this class. So look at each objective, and there's that magic word again. Align your course goals with objectives. So we're going to do a little poll here in a minute. So you guys have in front of you a list of objectives and two sets of things here. A degree objective, a course objective, and a module level objective. Two sets. Got 6 choices up here. You can talk to each other if you want. Take a minute and see if you can tell me what is the order that those would go in here. And by the way, these are Undergraduate Public Health 350, a new class I taught last spring. Beating the Odds, Statistical Modeling and Disease Prediction. That's the name of the class. You have 6 objectives. 2 of them are degree related for the undergraduate public health degree. 2 of them are specific to my class, and 2 of them are module specific objectives. And we're going to start on the left first. All right, so we want to know for the one on the left, and this goes degree, course, module. Just text the number 1, 2, or 3 for what you think it is on the left. ABC, BAC, so degree, course, module. Looks like number 2 was in fact our winner, so people got that correct. So our degree level is understanding historical milestones in public health and how they influence current practice. Oh my God, that's a squishy objective if I've ever heard one. Understand the world, right? So that's B, right? Then A, critique published research manuscripts, is a course level objective. How they do that in modules is complete the 11-point paper checklist for the assigned research paper. So that 11-point paper checklist, that is a specific and measurable outcome. And there's a rubric that I provide the students for that when it's completed. And they actually do a discussion board following that. All right, let's try the next one. Got 3 more for the one on the right. So this is D, E, F. Might have been a little bit more clear now. So D, communicate public health approaches, messages, and findings effectively both orally and writing. That's actually a little bit more measurable and specific than the prior one was, followed by F, interpret and explain and write results of linear models analyses. So this class is specific to linear models. I'm not going to meet all public health approaches in this one class, but I can use the interpret, write, and explain results of linear models to support that degree level objective. And then followed by complete an ANOVA using your statistical software and the 10 steps of analyzing data outline. Specific and measurable. And they will also get a rubric back about that. If you walk past 127 on the first day of class next Tuesday, you will see my students up and attempting to put the 10 steps in order on the first day of class. We do it again towards the end of the semester, and boy, they can pop those suckers right back up. It's interesting, after 1 year of statistical, how they're still not quite sure about the order of those. But that's okay. So once your objectives are aligned, you can move on to your assessments. And as I've said, they should be supported by a practicing application for the module level objective. There should be something that they are doing. It can be watching a video, reading text, writing a paragraph, but something that they are doing to have those objectives build. A lot of the lead-in ones, so I put the majority of my reading online. The students are expected to have read that before they walk into class. I am not going to spend my time teaching you what you can read. What we're going to spend our time on is doing SAS. Because if I can get them all on the computers in class working SAS out, then I'm not going to have to field 22 students' individual SAS programming problems over the course of a week. So we get them working one example in class, get their code right, and then they've got an assignment that goes with that they can go out and do on their own. When you have an online class, you're more or less forced to use rubrics because you aren't going to be standing up in front of a class and walking through a homework and talking about things. You're more or less going to have some kind of rubric so each student can go through their exam or test or homework and see what they got right or wrong. I started adopting those for my in-person classes a long time ago, especially if you're teaching core courses and you've got 80 students. It's much easier for you to tell them to self-review, which is what we all have to do every day, and then come talk to you if they think that they've missed something or that they don't understand something. So you can use the Canvas for that. What type of assessments should you utilize? So I've completely stolen this from William Glasser, but I really like it. So students only remember 10%, or we only remember 10% of what you read. It's probably more closer to 2% for me. I have horrible reading comprehension. 20% of what you hear, 30% of what you see, all the way down to 90% of what we teach to others. Each one teach one, right? You never learned material better than when you had to teach it to somebody. So start incorporating peer reviews. And that takes, by the way, some of the grading off of you. Think, plan, write, summarize. Or as I say, think, plan, do. Start with an online activity that has zero penalty other than just completing it. That checklist for the paper. Just have to get it in on time. Move the concepts then in face-to-face to small group work. Escalate to a larger group discussion, and then address a similar problem in a homework or an exam. That's a escalation. Make thinking visible is one of the things. I want to see how you're thinking. The better you, the better you write, the better you read, the better you think. So sort of trying to incorporate all of those things into each of my activities. And it does sound like a lot of time, but once you've really gotten through one semester, it becomes much more easy. So assessment number 2, 6 Post-it notes. Let's put these assessments in order. I have to tell you, the Post-it activity is one of my favorite things, and I actually learned it from a discussion board technique that somebody was using in an online class and thought about how to translate it into an in-person class. And I got a great question about accessibility. What do you do for colorblind students? Well, the deal is that there's words on them, as well as numbers here for the order. So for those of us that aren't colorblind, we can actually see sort of a clear pattern here. For those that are, I would then, which I will do right now, oh no, read them out. This is how I would do it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way. What you can see is that the purple and the orange are flipped a lot because it depends on what you want. Are they learning something from the video that they need to read the paper? Or are they learning something from the paper that they need to understand for the video, right? So that could be either thing. So are they reading a published manuscript and then watching like a video blog about it? Yeah, so they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around. Same thing, the pinks and the blues, then it starts to get a little bit squishy, right? Starts to get, so the pinks are sort of mostly in the center, that's post and reply, and then critique a paragraph using. So I would have them post and reply to 3 before they had to then structure a critique on, then they would write the paragraph taking a pro and con position. So they posted theirs and wrote replies to 3 others. They've seen everyone's. Now take a pro and con position, and that's, graded. Critique a classmate using the rubric that you have, and then summarize the entire discussion. So by the way, the critiques can be anonymous. It's easy enough to do. I did that in my summer class with Dr. Beasley. We had them numbered, the students numbered, and they critiqued abstracts. And then the students just got all the critiques back without someone's name on them. So the critiques can be anonymous. And then summarize the entire discussion, or there could be a question on a paper or an exam to talk about how that feeds through. It's really your preference in terms of what you're trying to get out of the activity. So critiquing may be a way for them to find errors in their own form of thought before they have to summarize or write a paper. That's how I would think about it. So I would have them critique somebody else's write-up of a statistical analysis before they wrote a full one of their own, like critique this paragraph. But that's just for my class. But there are certainly ways that, we're losing them, that these can be switched around. But it's that thought process that QM forces you to have in terms of the alignment of your assessments and how they support that module level, course level, and degree level objective. That brings you straight to QM4, your instructional materials. A variety of materials allows different learners to achieve their highest learning level. Like I said, I have horrible reading comprehension. I'm surprised I got into college, my SAT scores were so bad. It's only because my math ones were really, really high. So just reading something for me isn't the best way. I have actually utilized online readers for papers. I can read. But using a PDF reader, I absorb better auditory. I'm an auditory learner. So I will use a PDF reader and listen to the paper being read rather than simply just reading it myself. And so making those available for the people who you think are going to have issues with vision may also actually help the other students. And vice versa, having closed captions might be better for people who are not auditory learners. So you may be able to turn the auditory off and read the captions. Again, you don't want to, the example I gave earlier about having students read speeches is certainly helpful for a speech writing class, but ultimately they are going to have to give a speech and see how people give speeches. So videos would come in. In online courses, materials are often presented in a variety of ways. So you can get videos, supporting materials, learning checks within online materials. If you haven't taken the Canvas class to figure out how to put quizzes in a video, it's fantastic. It stops the video. They have to answer the question before they can move on. And it grades them for you, right? So it's not just plug and play, like where they just go and do their laundry, right? So they actually have to stop in the middle. We talked about escalating the materials already, how you can do that in face-to-face classes. So I often post videos or readings before class time, have a small activity, usually a checklist that they have to watch the video to fill out, questions they have to answer and bring to class, and then it's a discussion in the classroom. And that frees up the people who freak out about talking in class. If they've already prepared ahead of time, they're more comfortable with then just not being faced with a straight up, do you have to talk right now? According to QM, there should be a goal for each type of learning interaction, and this is QM5. Student to content, so reading and watching, student to instructor, lecture discussion, and student to student, group work, discussion, and peer review. So think about what the goal of that activity is and how it can foster what it is the goal of the course is. As statisticians, we are going to be consultants by nature. We have to learn to speak other people's languages because God knows nobody learns matrix algebra, right? So we do a lot of time on writing and peer review and trying to figure out how to convey something that's 6 pages of output into a paragraph, right? So we do a lot of, sort of bouncing in between student to student and student to instructor to really get those finding their voices. So again, I sort of always go back to this triangle of what it is that you need people to learn from each of these assessments. Some of them are really low danger. It's just really to get them thinking about it, and they can escalate up to higher activities. And that brings us to our third activity that we have. So we are rounding out our time here. So the third activity you see, the modified taxonomy, the newer one. I've split mine into think, plan, do. And this is directly to your point about, well, we would have said summarize before critique or critique. This is just how I sort of synthesize all this material, is I've broken them into 3 levels instead of 6. Because depending upon what the goal of your class is, there may be some things that sort of naturally come before other things. So we have think, plan, do. On that next page, you've got space to write. Again, group activity. What I would love for you guys to think about, believe it or not, nurses have to take a hand washing course. I have a friend who failed it 3 times because she always forgot to use a clean paper towel to exit the room. She always used the same paper towel she dried her hands off with, right? So there are things that we don't think about, but somebody has to think about these. So what if you have an online nursing course that is tutorials, or a face-to-face teaching course that's tutorials on how to wash your hands? So let's think about 3 separate activities that you would do that would escalate from low penalty up to, how would you introduce this in a think, plan, do situation? So watch a video? Yeah, watch a video. Would your video be of background or of the actual task? Both? Yeah, both would be really, really handy. Really focus in on that person using a clean paper towel to exit the room, right? So what would our plan be? Anybody have an activity for plan? We just had a conversation during this thing about spending a whole bunch of time on your class, and then you'd go through the QM and you go, oh my goodness. And you see things that you just didn't even think about, that didn't occur to you. And it's not that what you did is wrong, it's that there's always room for improvement. And so those types of activities where you can get really low level feedback that's not necessarily graded against what you get in the course is really helpful. And then for the do, wash their hands. Yes, wash their hands, wash their hands. And so maybe you could then also set up peers to go through in a lab and watch each other and say, no, so somebody stands there with the checklist, repetition, practice, so that they could, do that. Or why don't you make a video for the class as a group so that other people can watch your instruction, and then those videos can be used later. Then we wrap around really quickly into the 6, 7, and 8 for QM that can really be assistive in your face-to-face classes. You can also utilize your learning management system for weekly Q&A. So I take all the emails I get from students for the whole week, and on Fridays I just publish it to the whole class. And if I get somebody saying, hey, Dr. Cofield, I said, hey, read the announcement from last Friday. They're required in my class to read those announcements before they ask me questions. Because a lot of times it's been answered in those digests. When I'm doing an online class, I publish a weekly video of myself, even if it's just 5 minutes, so that the students get used to seeing me. By the way, I travel a lot. I'm going to be gone for 4 classes this coming semester. I know my students are probably really excited for class to be canceled. No, they're going to watch videos, right? Which you can do now, and the school can help you. 7 and 8, the support and accessibility, you can link to all of those on your website. Recording and transcripting them goes with 4, 7, and 8 if you have videos. That wraps around Q, 7, and 8. And as my Post-its are giving up behind me, let's revisit our objectives for today. I left off the introduce QM because I talked about it. There's a record of it here if you want to go back. Apply QM standards to a face-to-face class. We reviewed the rubrics. We talked about what could go online. Those were both lecture-based. And then applying the rubrics was activity number 1. So aligning the module, course, and degree level objectives. Categorize learning objectives to a module level course, right? That was activity 2. So we did this. So we put our assessments, the alignment of the assessments in order. And then design a 3-level outline. So again, it's a little bit more of the lecture discussing things. If you are interested in taking more QM, if you haven't taken the Apply the QM rubric, the online class, or the classes, the in-person classes for fall have been set up. You can go to the e-learning and find those. You can also take the classes online. I've done both. I took the in-person and the online class, and I found them both to be useful for different reasons. Obviously, the in-person class, you have a lot more discussion going on, and you can sort of learn by osmosis. The online, I think, digs a little bit deeper. So if you're actually getting ready to plan a new class from the start, the online may be more assistive, but we are QM subscribers, so you get a big discount when you take them. And I thank you.